evening, and welcome to Behind the Shadows. My name is Susan Finelli, and I am your host and author of Behind the Shadows, a program we go behind the shadows of what meets the eye. Tonight, we will be going behind the shadows of Ghosts of New York, and our very special guest tonight is Dr. Phil Schoenberg. Dr. Phil received his Ph.D. in history from New York University. He has taught classes on New York City history. He is a leading expert on the Big Apple and has a special skill in entertaining and informing about the Big Apple from its real-life stories and folktales. In 1995, Dr. Phil launched New York Walks and Talks that offers over 100 different tours of the Big Apple. In 2006, he launched Ghosts of New York that now offers 16 ghost walks, the most ghost walks of any city in the world. Dr. Phil, welcome to Behind the Shadows.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Susan.
It is such a pleasure to have you tonight. As we were discussing before we went on air, I personally believe in ghosts, so tonight's discussion is going to be a very fascinating one for me. Can you tell me, how did you first get interested, and then how did you start Ghost Walks of New York?
Well, what happened was I had been a New York City school teacher, and I decided to leave the system. And I took classes in museum studies. I interned at the Queens Historical Society, where I used to tell people how to do a walk at downtown Flushing the day before. So I said, if they can do it, I can do it. Well, I did Queens for 2 years, but it didn't turn out to be a gold mine. So I went to Manhattan, and I did fairly well doing different walks in Manhattan. And then I realized, how could I distinguish myself from the competition? And I realized on a visit to Gettysburg, which is Ghost Tours Central, but not Ghost Walk, not Ghost Central.
Right.
They had like 10 to 15 different ghost walks.
Were they legitimate?
Well, they were pretty good at telling you interesting stories. They walk you 2 blocks down the middle of nowhere. They had great stories, and that was it. I said, well, New York City has celebrity ghosts.
That's right.
And we have actual buildings. So I said, why not? And until then, I had been doing ghost walks sporadically around Halloween time, like everybody else.
Right.
And so I also realized that I was I may be a great director like Alfred Hitchcock, but I was not a great actor like Clint Eastwood. So I decided I would hire people that would interpret my scripts a lot better than I could.
Than you could. Well, I understand that you believe New York City is the most haunted city in the country. Do you confer with other ghost authorities? I mean, and how did you come to that conclusion? I've
read every possible book, collected every possible book that there is on ghosts in New York City. Also, I've gone to New York Historical Society, the Brooklyn Historical Society, as well as the New York Public Library, to look up information about ghosts. And one of the problems, of course, is when newspapers start. Ghosts are a function of memory, and when people don't rewrite stuff about ghosts, retell the stories, they die.
I see.
You see, the knowledge passes out of existence. 100 years ago, every newspaper had frequent reports about ghosts and ghost stories.
So that keeps the spirit alive?
Yes.
Well, you mentioned that you've read a lot of books on ghost stories, but you didn't mention that you wrote a book on the ghosts of Manhattan, which is a wonderful book. And for you ghost buffs out there, I suggest that you pick up a copy because it's a wonderful book and it has great pictures and stories about the ghosts of Manhattan. So it is a good book to read. How do you become aware of ghost activity?
Well, ghost activity you become aware of there could be a drop in temperature or an increase in temperature. You have an uneasy feeling someone else is present, Maybe animals may be sensitive. Sometimes pets will not go into certain locations unless they go with you. Sometimes you see unusual phenomena, such as maybe shadows, but there's no objects where the shadows are causing them to be cast. Sometimes you hear strange noises, or you see something visual that doesn't quite belong. But sometimes you even smell ghosts.
Well, that's interesting, because I was going to ask you about odor, because, sometimes I smell flowers, or like a lavender smell when they're nowhere to be found. So I'm a believer, so I say, there must be a ghost here tonight.
Well, for example, I have Ulysses Grant as a ghost on the Upper East Side, and sometimes you can smell his ghostly presence because he likes to smoke cigars.
Interesting. That is really interesting. Do the ghosts know you, or do they ever frighten you? I mean,
well, I never had an unfriendly encounter with a ghost. Now, I did have, I could say, one encounter with a ghost, which was when I did the tours personally. We wound up at El Buco restaurant, 47 Bond Street. They make very nice Italian dishes.
Oh, we'll have to go 47 and 47 Bond?
Yes.
Okay, I have to make a point to get there.
East Village.
Yes.
And sometimes I will have parties downstairs for people, and sometimes they'll let me bring a group down. So we went downstairs where I did the Grand Climax at Edgar Allan Poe, who used to live there at one point, who found it a very handy place to get his drinking done. And so he's still around there, and occasionally there's shortages in the wine bottles, which are unopened, unexplained. And so at that time, just shows you how long ago it was, e-cameras had just come into existence. So someone took an e-photograph, and there was an unexplained source of light in the background. I learned for the first time that was called an orb.
An orb? O-R-B?
Yes.
O-R-B, orb. Okay. And do the ghosts ever hide from you? When they feel you? Because I'm assuming if we feel their presence, I mean, they feel our presence. Do they see us, or is it just an awareness of us? I mean, how do they know we're here?
Well, the ghosts come in. You have to ask how a ghost created. So, understanding that they a variety. Some are replay ghosts, where they just repeat themselves again and again, and they do a certain behavior. Other people, surprisingly, it's also a good way to get rid of ghosts. Some ghosts don't know they're dead.
Interesting.
So you inform them they're dead, then they disappear.
How do you distinguish a ghost that knows he or she has passed over, and one who thinks, I have to get up and go to work tomorrow?
I guess you have to use your own personal judgment. And some ghosts like to hang around because, for example, you have Peter Stuyvesant, who's the oldest active European ghost in New York City, and he's been hanging around for the past 400 years.
And where does he?
He does his haunting at St. Mark's Church in the Bowery. Okay. He's buried in a mausoleum that's a part of the church, and he's been reported since he died at age 80 in 1672 to do his haunting. First at his home until it burned down in 1744, which was a block away, and then he's been haunting at the church ever since.
And what does he do? What are his hauntings?
When he was active haunting his home, he liked to make the servants break the pottery. He liked the sound of crockery and pottery breaking.
And then they would get fired for breaking so much pottery.
Yes. He had apparently he had a Three Stooges sense of humor. And then at the church, he just tried to scare away people from certain locations. Like when they were putting through the Second Avenue street, he was disturbed to try to scare away the workers. That was 1831. Then when they whitened the street around 1900, he tried to do the same thing again. Yeah. And then another point, on April 14th, 1865, the bells began to ring unexpectedly, and the church. What's all more amazing was the rope to the bells had been cut and it was missing. So how could the bells ring?
How could the bells ring?
But if you know your history, who died on that day? Abraham Lincoln. So apparently he was being welcomed to the heavenly firmament by Peter Stuyvesant. And they found what happened was they investigated the ringing of the bells. They saw this ghostly figure in a Dutch period costume with a peg leg. Peter Stuyvesant was missing a leg, had a wooden leg.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And and so what happened? They saw him disappear, and what amazed them was they found the next day the rope on his mausoleum.
So he was communicating.
Yes.
Tis I.
Yes, he's a very active ghost. Mm-hmm. Another point, in the 1930s, the priest noticed a young man was always looking at him in a certain direction when he gave the sermon. Mm-hmm. So he became curious. He asked the young man, what was he looking at when he was doing the sermon? Well, he said, when you give the sermon, I noticed there appears to be a man and a woman in Dutch period costume, and the man has a wooden leg. And apparently, they're gossiping about you while you're giving the sermon. So apparently, Peter Stuyvesant had quite a girlfriend over the centuries.
I see, a ghostly girlfriend.
Yes.
Yes, I wonder who she was.
Yes. Now, what's interesting was the Stuyvesant family was the next to richest family in Manhattan Island because of all the land that he had owned. He owned Bowery Farm number 1. Mm-hmm. When he got downsized out of his job when the British came in 1664, he gave himself the best farm in Manhattan.
I see.
So when the city began to expand northward, they began to sell off parts of it for real estate development. Mm-hmm. So the male branch died out eventually. The brother and two sisters were so hoity-toity, they didn't find anybody they wanted to marry. So 1954, when the last direct male descendant died, they thought that would be the end of the activity of Peter Stuyvesant. So they opened up the mausoleum to put in the last male descendant.
Yeah.
And you can still hear
he was still around.
They could hear the thumping of the peg leg.
Isn't that interesting?
And not only that, that's not the end of the story because they still continue to be active.
Really?
I'll give you one last story. Back in about 10 years ago, Christmas Day, the congregation was having was just finishing the service. When suddenly hear, then 8 bottles of rum, then 7 bottles of rum. They rush into the common room where they spot what appeared to be a ghostly figure, Dutch period costume, peg leg disappearing the wall, and the punch bowl was down an inch.
Wow! So he was thirsty.
Yes,
he was thirsty.
Yeah.
Moving away from Peter Stuyvesant a little bit, are there particular structures where you find ghosts? Do they like to camp out at churches or schools or hospitals or old townhouses, or you can find them in a new building that's gone up?
Well, it depends. I mean, for example, you take the public theater, which is at the Astor Library. And there they have several different ghosts. They have, for example, Joe Papp, who's found his happy place. He nothing tragic happened to him. He just likes being there. And what happens is the people only recognize him afterwards because he was there encouraging them to be actors or directors as part of the, right. so. Or sometimes, so here's a new ghost. Or, for example, you take, the founder of the Second Avenue Deli.
Oh, he was murdered.
Yes.
Yes, he was murdered.
Jack Lee Well.
Is he a ghost?
Yes.
He is?
Yes. And he's a very specialized ghost that you and I cannot see.
Where is he? Is he at his new location?
He appears before the vendors when they set up the block parties and street fairs between East Village and Washington Square. Because what happened was in life he campaigned against block parties and street fairs. Now you may say, what type of Grinch could he be? But if you know a New York City street fair or block party, they're phony.
Yeah.
They're not really for the neighbor. They're commercial ventures that charity sponsors, and they get a little rake off. So they said, look, they come into the neighborhood, the people that go to these fairs, they park all over the place so my customers can get in.
Right.
They spew garbage over the street, and they don't pay taxes.
There's still a reward out for his murderer because they opened it up on 33rd Street now with the Second Avenue Deli.
I've been there. It's very nice.
Yes. And they have a sign with his picture outside that there's a reward, and it's been many, many years.
Yeah, $100,000.
Now, why is it that we cannot see him? Who can see him?
Vendors, because he tries to scare them off from setting up.
I see.
So he hasn't been successful. He does his best.
How do you get rid of a ghost?
Well, there's several ways to get rid of a ghost. the worst way, unfortunately, is to destroy the actual physical structure. A good example of that is 84 West 3rd Street.
Okay.
And what happened was Edgar Allan Poe lived there for several months in the 1840s. And his wife was there. His mother-in-law was there to nurse his wife. He was finishing his poem, The Raven, and what happened was the building went through a lot of changes of ownership, and finally NYU acquired it, and they decided about demolish it to make way for a residence for the law students. So there was a big battle in the community, but ultimately the judge ruled nobody did anything to preserve it beforehand, so it was unreasonable to force NYU to now preserve it. But although he felt morally the university should do something, the university said, okay, we'll reconstruct part of the structure, which you can see, but you have to realize that part of the structure you see as part of the law residence, it's 17 feet away from the original location. It's 3 stories instead of 4 stories.
Right.
And the original bricks are in Baltimore now at the Poe Museum.
I see.
And so he stopped haunting there. Since they demolished it about 10 years ago, he stopped haunting there.
Stopped haunting.
Another way is you ever see the movie Ghost Town?
No, I have not.
Okay. And what happens is you got a dentist, a misanthropic dentist. And what happens is he solves the problems of the ghosts. They had something unsolved. They wanted something to be completed. He completes the task for them, and they disappear because now the problem has been solved. Now that could be anywhere from giving good advice to a loved one, or you have messenger ghosts that bring a message.
Right.
And once they bring the message, they disappear.
They're finished.
They have some people. Sometimes the ghost will appear to solve my murder. Or find where I'm buried, where I buried, and rebury me in the proper location. One place that's probably had the most exorcism on record is the African burial ground. That's at. I think they've downtown. They have the most. I mean, they do at least one exorcism ceremony a year there.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
boy. They have a lot. There's a lot of guilt connection with slavery.
Of course. If I were to come to you and say, Dr. Phil, I have a ghost in my apartment, how would you either verify it or debunk it? I mean, how would you come in and say, yes, you do have a ghost, or, sorry, you're hallucinating?
Well, you have these gas meters now, so you get to try to detect electrical activity. You also have where EVP, where you can listen to the sounds, the sounds. Sometimes you can tell by smell. Sometimes anecdotal activity of some kind.
And they kind of come and go, right? A ghost is not going to be there, 24 hours a day, right?
Right.
So if you were to come, there's no saying that the ghost was going to be there at that particular moment. Or if it's a ghost that likes to have a good time and is there and sees you coming, the ghost will disappear for a while till you leave.
Well,
you never know.
I say it's hard to prove a negative.
That's right. It's hard to prove that. Let's talk a little bit about some other ghosts that you have come across. I know we spoke about Edgar Allan Poe, but who else can we talk about that you have seen?
Well, Edgar Allan Poe is the only real encounter I've had personally.
Oh, you personally had an encounter with him?
That was with the orb.
Ah, right.
Before.
Right. But I understand, like Henry Flagler, is he one of your ghosts? Flagler? Is he one of your ghosts?
Well, let me explain. We have ghosts.
He's a snowbird, right?
Yes, we have ghosts of Palm Beach. He comes from if I remember correctly, he comes from the Midwest. But anyway, he commutes to Palm Beach, where what happened was he is really the father of Florida. He built the railroad down there. He built a series of resorts, and he made Florida a popular destination and developed the agricultural community there. And so he did a lot of good things throughout eastern Florida. And so he built this magnificent mansion in Florida, at Palm Beach, the town of Palm Beach itself, where he gave a lot of parties. And apparently he liked it so much he stuck around ever since he died.
He's still there.
And went along with his wife, still giving ghostly parties.
What about Sarah Winchester?
Okay, she's an interesting person. Now
Ghost. Ghost.
Yes. Well, actually, she's not a ghost herself.
Okay.
What happened was Sarah Winchester married the son of the founder of the Winchester Rifle. That's New Haven, Connecticut, where we have ghosts in New Haven.
Okay.
And so what happened was she lost her daughter, she lost her husband, and she went to a psychic seance where she was told the ghosts were taking their revenge because their deaths connected with the Remington the Winchester Rifle Company. I didn't mean to give a free advertisement to the company.
That's all right. As a disclaimer.
So she decided that she was told she built rooms and stairwells and everything else that would keep them awake, keep them occupied.
So it would take them a long time to get there?
So she decided eventually to go to San Jose, California, where apparently she felt it would be more conducive. And I guess she was hoping if she left New Haven to go to San Jose, she'd leave them behind, but they followed her.
He followed her?
Yes. So until she died, she always had construction work going on at her home in San Jose, California.
To keep them guessing, right?
Yes, keep them guessing,
right.
Keep them busy, keep them occupied.
Do animals ever come back as ghosts, pets?
Yes. A very good example is Fella.
Fella?
F-A-L, the dog of Franklin Roosevelt.
Ah.
Now, the Roosevelts, Franklin and his wife Eleanor were dog lovers. They had owned like 30 dogs at the same time.
In the White House?
Well, that was the problem with the dogs. The dogs were, they had it in the country, they had it in New York City. Well, the problem with the dogs was either they were not housebroken, or let's take a nip at people, as Winston Churchill could personally testify. So, FDR's favorite cousin gave him a dog, a Scotty, that he named Fowler. Had a long, fancy name. But he loved the dog, and he spoiled that dog. He liked to give the dog cocktails now and then.
No wonder he kept coming back.
And he loved to walk the dog. He's probably the most photogenic pet of all time at the White House. And so he was a people person. He even helped with the war effort. He donated some of his toys for the war effort.
For the war effort?
Yes. And what happened was, when FDR died in Warm Spring, Georgia, Fowler, who was at the White House at the time, sensed it, as FDR's widow testified. And at one point, Eleanor Roosevelt lived at 31 Washington Square West, adjacent to Washington Square Park, where she used to walk Fowler every day in Washington Square Park. Sometimes she would be accompanied by Colin Camille, the Godfather, who lived in the same building. He'd be walking his dog. Yes. So anyway, Fowler would be busy looking for FDR. He would be barking once in a while. And so what happened was, after she died, he could still be seen looking for his master in Washington Square Park. So if you see unaccompanied black Scotty, that could be Fella.
That could be Fella.
Yes.
Well, interesting. All right. Well, listen, if we can come back as a ghost, why not? Why not dogs? Exactly. Have you ever partake in a seance? Have you ever participated in a seance?
Yes, actually, I took part in a seance because I was asked to write a script for a seance.
Who gives a seance?
Okay, what happens is a seance is someone tries to get in contact with the spirits.
Right.
And it's kind of like a service of some kind, where they try to standing patterns. They try to be conducive and welcoming, and we hope to hear from you, and somehow you'll manifest yourselves. And so as I was writing the script, I went to a couple of these seances, and I was not impressed.
Are they hoaxes? I mean.
Well, let me put it this way. the problem with a lot of psychics is, with like Gene Dixon, is they give tons of predictions. People never remember the 98% they got wrong.
That's right.
And the classic one is by Johnny Carson, who was a professional magician, where Uri Geller had problems with him because, of course, Uri Geller claims psychic powers. And Johnny Carson, being a professional magician, had his staff carefully watch Geller so he couldn't handle anything to do it. But Johnny Carson said, "I'm still waiting for the following headline. Psychic wins the lottery."
That's right.
Well, if there's a psychic out there, might win the Powerball tonight, the Mega Ball, $363 million.
I know. I'm in it to win it.
Yeah.
I'm in it to win it. I remember when my grandmother was alive. A psychic approached her in the street, and she said, come in and I'll tell you, your future. And she says, and so that I'm legit, I'll tell you everything that happened in your past. And my grandmother says, you don't have to tell me what happened in my past. I know what happened in my past, I'm not interested in you telling me that.
What happens is these type of psychics or fortune tellers, they have certain patterns that they follow.
Yeah.
But one time I was looking for my car in Greenwich. I forgot where I was looking for a couple of days. So I approached a fortune teller.
She told you where it was?
No such luck.
Dr. Phil, I hate to cut you short, but I'm getting cued that unbelievable. We're running out of time. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure having you. And I want to thank our audience for tuning in and remind you about Dr. Phil's books, Ghosts of Manhattan. If there's a topic that you would like us to discuss, you can contact me at Susan at BehindTheShadows.com. If you've missed any of our programs, you can go to my website at www.BehindTheShadows.com and click on Public Access Television. And until next time, remember, the brightest light shines behind the shadows.
How can we haunt you?
Yes, how can we haunt you? Thank you so much. It was so much fun. Did you have a good time?
Absolutely.
Good. It was great. I had such a good time. It's going to be a great show. Yeah. There's just so much more to talk about, ghosts.
Yes.
We could have gone.
I'd be happy to return another time.
Okay, yeah, exactly. It'll be fun. Yeah.
Have me come back for Halloween.
Oh, that would be interesting. It would be good if I can get a live show on Halloween. That would be nice.
Well, I may be very busy directing.
Oh, that's right. Exactly.
Get me the month before.
Yeah. But no, I think that our audience is going to enjoy the show.